Gyles and Alison are here to talk about the top stories today. We're starting with calls for children to be taught more grit in schools. Gyles, what do you know about this?
I know a lot about this, for a reason. This was first mooted, this idea of more grit for young people, in 1907. That's when the phrase grit, meaning adding character, edge to your personality, grit was introduced by a psychologist, 1907. In 1908, Robert Baden-Powell founded the Scout movement.
Yep.
And ever since then, every generation has said, young people need to show more grit. I was lucky enough to work for many years for the late Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, married to the late Queen, who in the 1950s founded the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, based on principles he'd learnt as a schoolboy up in Scotland in the 1930s. Healthy mind, healthy body, challenging young people. And that's what the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme still does all these years later. So this isn't a new idea, but quite rightly, the government is now thinking, actually, how can we spread this? Things do exist, like the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, like Outward Bound, like the Scout movement, to encourage young people to have more independence and more grit. But maybe more needs to be done, and those facilities need to be made more available to more people.
So I think what it comes on the back of is this sort of sense that there's an epidemic around mental health problems with a lot of young people, a lot of children sort of missing days at school. So I think before the pandemic, it was something like 6.8 million school days each year were missed. And then last year, we're up to 11.5 million. So that is a significant increase. So what can we do to A, make younger people feel better, and B, can we just get them back into school so that the rest of their life isn't impacted?
Is giving them more grit the answer? I mean,
well, I think it's one of the answers.
Is it resilience? Is that what,
that's what it
means. Yeah.
It means get a grip. Face life. Come out. Don't be shy of life.
But Gyles, the one thing, and we've all been teenagers, the one thing that we all relate to is if you demonise teenagers, teenagers will therefore run a million miles.
And the truth is, we haven't all been teenagers. I was middle-aged.
Yeah, that's true.
From the moment you were born.
That is the truth of it. So, but I know what you're saying. What I'm really saying is that this isn't a new issue. We don't need to stigmatise this generation and say, oh, you're all weak. I'm saying people have been aware that you need to challenge young people and give them a sense of resilience. And grit is just a shorthand phrase.
Do you think we forget what a seismic, cataclysmic period that lockdown was for kids of a certain age?
And I think so. And I do think there's a tendency at the moment to sort of like blame young people for so many problems. So there was that awful period of COVID where they lost all sort of familiarity in their lives. But also, we can't look at this, I don't think, without talking about phones and social media.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things I do think this government should have done is come out with the ban on phones in schools. That would have been a step in the right direction. As parents, we need to look at our own behaviours, you know, when we reach for our phone in front of our kids. So it's lots of things just to help them get back into...
And a number of schools are already doing things. I mean, I've heard about schools where some of the children are refusing to go to school. They just won't go. And the schools themselves have now got teachers who are helping them to actually retrain them to get used to school life, encouraging them and making it easier for them.
So this is Bridget Phillips and West Streeting, the Secretaries of State of Education and Health, respectively. They said, by deploying NHS-led evidence-based intervention during children's formative years, not only halt the spiral towards crisis, but cultivate much-needed grit amongst the next generation, essential for academic success and life beyond school with its ups and downs. It sounds good. I just don't know how it works.
What isn't clear from this, what are they going to do? The examples I give, at least the things that exist at the moment, that's... But then maybe there's more.
I think there are going to be hubs in schools and there'll be essentially more mental health provision and the opportunity for young people to talk about how they're feeling, to encourage them back into school if they're missing out. So it's going to be lots of different things, I think, to just try and re-normalise life.
I mean, I know that the late Duke of Edinburgh, for what it's worth, his idea would have been less talking, more doing. Actually get out and do things. I mean, I remember a project that I was involved in about 40 years ago where he challenged young people to walk 1,000 miles. To find a destination and get there. Work out how you're going to get there yourself and do it in any different way you want. Fantastic idea.
Okay.
But a lot of these children, they are really just the products of society that our generation has created, where it's become very individualistic. There's fewer people volunteering in sports clubs, therefore there's fewer places for them to go to. Cuts have meant, you know, social clubs have closed down.
And they're just sitting in their rooms on their phones. Let's be honest. It's like it's just,
Can we just for a moment salute all the people who are youth leaders, who do volunteering for sport, for boys and girls, who actually take time to actually do Saturday morning, Sunday afternoon. I mean, they're amazing. We just need more of those people.
We absolutely do. Right, we've got another story. So, Alison, there are calls to introduce 10 miles per hour speed limits. Where are these taking place? Obviously around schools, we're talking about.
Yes, they're talking around schools and hospitals, potentially. Yeah. And then the road safety charity, the Road Safety Foundation, which has looked at this, has said that it could save, you know, many, many lives over the course of a year. Obviously, the pushback is that people saying, well, look, you know, there's 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and people already hate those.
Yeah.
So I suppose the reality is, obviously, if we only ever drove at 10 miles an hour, fewer people would get killed and injured. It's just a fact, isn't it? So I suppose really it's...
Stop driving at all.
Stop driving.
Nobody will be killed on the roads.
So really, we just need to make a decision, OK, how many deaths are we prepared to see from cars?
The real serious issue here is that the research shows that every time you increase the speed limit by 10 miles faster, doubles the risk of death in an accident. So at 20 miles, it's double the risk at 10 miles. And in built-up areas, around schools, around hospitals, that's the idea here. One of the dangers of doing it too liberally is that near me, we've got 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on a couple of roads where it doesn't seem sensible.
Yeah.
And therefore, people don't obey the law. And you want to have people respecting these signs when they see them. That's the risk.
But also, I do think there's an interesting thing about essentially making driving less desirable. So that actually you think, oh, I don't want to do that. So you might take public transport, you might walk, you might cycle. And these are the things that really we need to be moving towards, both for safety, but also, you know, for climate.
Depends. Yeah, agreed. But I mean, I think within 10, 15 years, it's, you know, we'll be driving mostly electric cars, certainly within a generation, or certainly synthetic fuel cars as well. But, I mean, you don't want to tell people, like... You don't want to tell people how to live their lives. And like you said, I mean, the Welsh example, really, in 2022, Wales became the first nation to introduce default speed limit of 22 miles an hour. Whenever I watch Question Time from Wales, this would come up. People hated it.
They do.
And so if it's uniform, it doesn't seem to be that kind of... To make
I mean, it's a basic rule with laws is you've got to take the people with you, otherwise people will not follow the law.
Yeah.
And people have different views. I know you're a bit of a speed junkie. On the motorway, I park myself in the slow lane behind a huge lorry and go as slowly as I possibly can.
I'm a bit like you, Gyles.
Mr. Magoo, that's all from you. Talking more...
Gyles and Alison are still with us to talk through more of today's headlines. And now we're heading down under to hear an extraordinary story.
This is unbelievable. In November 2023, Georgia Gardner and her partner Joshua Fishlock were camping in Australia's Kangaroo Island with their beloved dachshund Valerie. Tragedy struck when Valerie ran off and went missing.
With the family torn apart, obviously, Georgia and Josh were distraught. But 529 days later, they received the miracle news that Valerie was not only alive and well, but had managed to survive in the Australian outback for almost 2 years.
Valerie joins us now to tell us her story, alongside delighted owners Georgia and Josh. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Oh, there's Valerie.
Guys, have you got any idea how she survived for that long?
Some pretty true grit and a lot of determination to get home.
This is incredible because Valerie, by your own admission, was quite a pampered pooch, right? Before she went running off.
Yeah, definitely. So she barely ever spent a night outside. She slept in our bed and had a little car seat and ramps everywhere. And then she spent 529 days on a remote island.
That's unbelievable.
You poor guy. She must have been so distraught when, you know, I guess she just turned you back and then she sort of like waddled off, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was we were on our second day of our camping holiday, and she was in a pen, and then unfortunately we've left for less than 30 minutes, and she's managed to break through the pen, and then she sat underneath our car, and some other campers were concerned that she would get run over. So then they've gone and tried to catch her, and unfortunately ended up chasing her off into the bushland.
Wow.
I just don't know how she survived. What was she eating out there?
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable. There's so many deadly little insects and stuff out there.
Yeah, so luckily Kangaroo Island doesn't have any foxes or rabbits, but it was likely she was surviving on deceased wildlife or dead stock or different things like that.
A lot of raw and meaty bones.
That's unbelievable.
Wow.
Has she changed in character quite a bit now? Is she sort of like just really independent and doesn't really need you anymore?
No, not really. She still has a little bit of separation anxiety, but it's definitely she's a little bit more independent, but otherwise she's just pretty much the same old Val. Really, just a 1.8 kilos stockier.
You guys must, I mean, when you get that call to say they found her, you must have been, just disbelief, I suppose.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. The Georgia called me and told me to open up my text messages, and my facial expression, I think my jaw quite literally hit the floor. Yeah, I don't think there was much sleep had that night. It was quite incredible.
It was honestly, it was the most insane feeling when Lisa from Kangala Wildlife Rescue, the non-for-profit charity that were involved in catching her, when she called me, I was at work and there was just something about it that made me think, oh, I should answer this phone call. And then, yeah, when she told me, I was grins from ear to ears. We had celebratory McDonald's.
Unbelievable.
So
Well, guys,
happy
just
you've been
congratulations now. Look,
reunited.
God, she really loves her mum, doesn't
Yes.
And she really loves kisses.
So
Guys, well
cute.
done.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Love that.
Thanks,
Great to have her back.
Thanks, guys.
Have a
See
lovely
ya.
Friday evening. OK, time for another story. So Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, has inherited the corgis, the Queen's corgis, that she says believes the late Queen uses to communicate with her. We just want to hear what she had to say, so let's have a little look at this.
I have her dogs. I know. I have her corgis, so every morning they come in and go, you know, woof woof and all that. I'm sure it's her talking to me. Anyway, but the real thing is that I had the greatest honour to be her daughter-in-law.
Wow.
Oh, I mean, that's actually quite sweet when you...
It's very sweet. I mean, Sarah Ferguson is the royal dog whisperer.
Yeah.
She understands them and they understand her. Same wavelength. The truth is, the late Queen, as we know, driven by duty, sustained by faith, but made happy to the end of her days by her dogs and her horses. She loved her corgis. As famously the Duke of Edinburgh said, if it doesn't fart or eat hay, she isn't interested. But if they did, she was. And Sarah and her husband, the Duke of York, the late Queen's second son, they took on the corgis, and there they are. She's not actually saying that the Queen is communicating through the corgis. She's just saying she feels the spirit of the
But when
Queen.
people have that loss, I think it's quite a common thing, isn't it? You see it in certain places in certain ways. And...
Well, you've got... What is your dog?
I'm Florence, Black Lab. She's gorgeous. Yeah. So
We had a smooth-haired fox terrier that died a few years ago, and his spirit is still there.
Yeah.
yeah.
But if it makes you feel close to the people that you've lost, it's
Yes.
like when I see butterflies or certain birds or maybe a feather, I always take it as a sign,
Yeah.
and it brings me comfort.
Yeah, it is. And also, I think at that point, you do wonder what the message might be, which is... I know you're saying that the corgis aren't actually saying what the Queen is, but there is that sense that I wonder at that point how the person I loved would have been feeling.
Yeah.
I don't know if you... I'm a huge fan of Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And I went to go and see him in New York. He did this Broadway show. And at the start of it, he talks about... He grew up in this lovely little street underneath this big tree. It was where he'd play as a child. And then when he was writing his book, he drove down the street, which is like 60 years later, and the tree had been cut down. Oh. And he was devastated. And then he does this beautiful metaphor for loss and grief. And he just says, yeah, it had gone, but somehow it was still there. Somehow it borne witness to too much for its shadow to be erased so easily. And it's just this marvel. And I think, you know, people see that through wherever. And as long as you see it, as long as it works for you, that's
And
a
that's
good
memory,
thing.
isn't it? That's They live with
As
it.
Queen Elizabeth said, you know, grief is the price we pay for love.
Yeah.
And, you know, you love your animals, you feel heartbroken when they're gone.
Yeah.
So, and the animals will feel heartbroken when their owner goes.
Yeah.
So,
Got a couple of... Jill got in touch. I'm working in the garden and Robin always seems to be watching me. I feel it's my late husband making sure I'm doing things right. That's nice, Jill.
And we've had another text from Jane. She said, we took my mum's cat back to Spain with us after she passed. I was sat on my bed having a cry one day and she appeared next to me and put her paw on my head. They just said, they know. And Robins for me as well are really powerful whenever I see Robins.
Yeah,
I
so
think of
nice.
my Nana, always.
OK, next up, after 18 years, one of Britain's favourite furniture stores is making a return to the high street. That is MFI.
MFI, back, baby.
Nice. Welcome back, MFI. So, retro brands, what would be your favourites?
well, my favourite brand, I mean, I'm still coping with this story about MFI, only because the small print revealed to us that 60% of children conceived in this country during a period when MFI were going were conceived on MFI bedding.
I mean, they should be a national... They shouldn't have been allowed to go bust. That's a national treasure.
Extraordinary.
It's like Rolls-Royce
Anyway,
or something.
having shared that, let us park it, and I will go back to two Woolworths.
Yes.
I loved Woolworths.
Yes.
You could buy anything. In the old days, everything. Rubber
Pick and
bands.
mix.
You could go.
Yeah.
But the sweets,
Pick and
the
mix.
pick and mix
Music, everything.
was wonderful.
Except not enough of us used it to save it. So that was the problem.
This is the problem. It went wrong. Something went wrong. Maybe also they tried to... they weren't like it used to be. Do any of you remember ABC tea rooms? The ABC Aerated Bread Company?
What are they like?
It was founded before my time in the 1850s, but it went on till the 1980s. It was a bakery. You went and you bought your bread, your buns, your...
You should start that again.
And then at the back, there was a tea room.
I mean,
Very civilised,
It was
Giles.
so civilised. The ABC, there were about 500 of them around the country. The last ones went in the 80s.
What about CNA? CNA, do you remember
CNA,
CNA?
that's
Janet's
Yeah.
texted in to say CNA.
You can still get them abroad, I
You
think.
can.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
well,
It's
Woolworths
beautiful.
exists in South Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
And Tanya said she'd love Woolworths to come back as well.
Yes.
And then Michelle said Tammy Girl. I love
Oh,
it. Tammy
Tammy
Girl.
Girl,
That was
yeah.
fantastic. Some of my
I guess
first
it's because the
ever.
companies get so big, and then after a while, they can't sustain the profit, right? So if you've just had a few Woolworths, they do pretty well. I grew up. My mum had a Saturday job at British Home Stores, so
yeah.
BHS always
Yeah.
has a huge soft spot for my heart.
Great lighting.
Yeah, great lighting. And in Colchester, they had a canteen next to the lighting. So my dad would take me and say hello to my mum. And then for one day, I was allowed whatever I wanted. So I'd have like strawberry flan for breakfast. It was like, oh, God, those memories. Yeah.
You see, ordering things online just isn't quite the same.
It isn't, is it?
No, it really isn't.
You don't get that experience. You don't get to touch it, feel it, buy things you probably didn't want to get anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every single day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the morning.